Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about leading your targets with an LPVO, okay, a low power variable optic. So the first thing that you're going to need is a scope with a complex reticle, okay. You need something with mill lines that you can hold down, okay. So it's got to be a complex reticle. This is one of those places where it's really going to, pay off dividends. So the one I have here is from Primary Arms. This is the PLX 1:8 by 24. I have done many reviews on this, okay, and I'll show you the reticle in a minute. Now this is a first focal plane scope, and one of the things I discovered today is that for leading targets you want a first focal plane scope, right? It's got to be first focal plane with that complex reticle. You can do it with a second focal plane, but it can become very confusing, and I will explain why. And that's one of the things that I learned today. Right, today was a learning day for me. I came out here to a real, off the gun range. Basically, you got to take the scope off of the gun, get into the real world, get to an area where you got people walking, people running, jogging. Got a guy on a bicycle over there. I got a kid over there on a skateboard. There's boats out there going back and forth, jet skis out there. So you got to get into the real world where you got both people and vehicles moving, okay, so that you can practice this technique. And this is something that has to be practiced, and you cannot do this at the gun range, okay, because the funny thing is, like, there's certain things that can only be done at the gun range. Well, there's certain things that can't really be done at the gun range really well, and this is one of them. For this type of practice, scope's got to come off the gun. I got to get into the real world, and I need a variety of different things to look at, right? I got little dogs running back and forth over here. I got, people, kid over there on one of those, I don't know, it looks like a skateboard with handlebars. I don't know what you call it. So I got, again, the cars going back and forth, the boats back there. You have to get into this environment. So first, let me show you the technique that I'm using, and then we will talk about the, why what is the optimal type of scope for this type of technique. Okay? So I have a printout. So actually, first let me get back here. I actually have two printouts because this is a first focal plane scope. So what that means is, when I am in one magnification, I see this image, right? Basically, I see a duplex reticle. Let me show I'm lined up here. So basically, I've got a duplex reticle. Now, when I zoom in, basically, I zoom into this area over here, right? And then I see this image over here, okay? So all this image is here. It's just really small, so you can't see it. And then as you zoom in, this stuff basically comes out of your field of view. You zoom in on the center over there, and that's when you see this stuff over here, okay? So this is what we refer to as a complex reticle. This has mill lines on it. Lots of information there. Basically, you got your bullet drop compensator here. You've got your mill lines here for range estimating, but you also have your auto range estimating, where you can auto range estimate based on the height of a man, right? So out here he's at 300 yards, in here he's at 800 yards, over here he's at 600 yards, and then you can auto range. Oh, you can also use the half of the height of the man from, let's say, from the line up. So you need something like this. Now the technique that I'm using, let me get something out that I can point with. Okay, so I'm putting this reticle on my target out there, and I'm starting out with the bullseye, or in this case the chevron, on my target. Okay, so with, let's say, the people running or bicycling, I'm going to count 2 seconds, right? So as soon as it gets here, I put it on it, I go 1, 2. I see how far out my person can get in 2 seconds. So it's like 1, 2. All right, so that's how far they are. So then what I would do is I would just shift this over. So basically, as my person is walking or bicycling or whatever he's doing, as soon as he crosses this line over here, I take my shot, and then he's going to walk into my shot. So with the cars, which are moving faster, I'll take 3 seconds, right? So basically, I'll put it here, and I'll be like 1, 2, 3. The car will be out here, right? So then what will happen is on this side here, the car's coming in. Whoops, wind's blowing this over. So the car's coming over. As soon as it gets here, boom, and then so basically as soon as the car crosses this line here, I would take my shot, and then the car is going to come into it, and then basically that's where the two would meet. Okay, so same thing with the boats, right? So the boat can be here, I'll put the boat on it, right? So boats, so basically 1, 2, maybe the boat goes out here to this little 7 over here. So then I know on the opposite side I'm going to put the 7 on it, right? The 7's over here, right? Put the 7 on it. So as soon as it crosses the 7, right, so I take my shot, boom, and then the two meet over here. So it doesn't matter what the object is, whether it's a person that's running, walking, bicycling, whether it's a car. The only difference with the cars, right, because they're going faster, I have to take a 3-second count. Or if it's something, let's say if somebody's walking and you can take a 1-second count, so it doesn't matter what the object is. It doesn't even matter if they're going like directly across, right? Because they can be coming in diagonally. Like a lot of those boats out there, they're coming in diagonally at me. It doesn't make a difference, right? Because I'm doing the same thing. I'm counting, it doesn't matter if they're moving in diagonally. I'm counting, from here to here, in those 2 seconds, how far they can travel, and then I know what to lead them by. Okay, so that's the technique that I'm using here today, and I didn't invent the technique. I'm basically practicing it. It is hard to practice with live fire because you have to set up some type of a complex pulley system to, or mechanical system to pull targets across. A way I've thought of doing it is on a hillside, where basically if you had an object on wheels that you could release and it could roll downhill, you can try and time your shots that way. But again, there's only so many times, because obviously it needs to be a little further out. It's a time-consuming thing to try and set up and coordinate with other people, to have this thing being released so that you can try and time the shots. But the idea here is that, especially if you're shooting, let's say we'll just talk about the context, right? Let's say you have a boat out there, right? End of the world apocalypse, you've got a boat out there that's going back and forth. Presumably they're doing some type of observation on your camp, right? So basically you want to, they're a little bit too close, you want to try and get rid of them, you want to harass them. You can use this technique to lead them and put effective fire, because they're probably going to be out 400 or 500 yards, what they think is beyond your range. So at 500 yards with an AR-15, using a complex reticle, 77 grain bullets, you can definitely put bullet holes in that boat. Now obviously you're not going to sink the boat, but if you put holes in their boat, they're going to want to pull further back out to a different position, right? They're not going to feel safe at the distance that they're out. So it's a way to counter harass your observers, basically. So and there's many different ways that you can fantasize possibly using this technique, but it's basically a way to lead a target and put effective fire on your target. Now, one of the things that I would do is let's say especially against a boat or a car, I would take my count and then probably lead it by a little bit more, because the margin of error that I would want is that my bullets go a little further out in front of the target than behind it, right? Because if they're going in front of the target, there's a chance that, hey, they might slow down, right? So let's say, so I'd rather have my bullets going missing to the front of the target than missing to the back of the target. So that's my opinion on that. So now that you guys understand the technique that I'm using, let me tell you why this is the one place where I think a first focal plane scope is kind of optimal. And I've done many videos comparing basically they were both primary arms, both complex reticles. Okay, so this is the other one that I used. I actually have a printout of that. Let's see, put that one. The other one that I used, and I came here earlier with that, and I was working with it. That was the primary arms 1 to 10 by 28, and that's the M10S. So basically that's a mill grid reticle. Looks like this. So so this one over here has actually built-in dots for leading. So basically that's your walker, that's your jogger, that's your runner, all right? But the problem with this is, it's like, okay, at what distance does this work at, okay? You know, and again, what if you're trying to lead a car or or a boat or something else? So and that's why it kind of makes more sense to count the seconds, you know, to take your own measurement rather than count on this, which, you know, it's like, okay, you don't know what distance this was designed for, okay, and exactly what speed the thing was moving. But the problem now, here's the thing, you can use the same technique that I was using before, right? So the technique I would use with this is same deal, right? I would put my, you know, my chevron on the target. So let's say it's a guy on a bicycle, right? So he's here. I go 1, 2. All right, he gets up to this line over here, right? So I know that on the other side, my guy on the bicycle, as soon as he crosses this line here, right, he crosses here, boom, and then the two meet here. Okay, so fine, that works great. So, but the thing is, I have to, whatever magnification I took that measurement at, I have to stay at. Okay, so if I took this, let's say at 3 magnification, I have to stay at 3 magnification, because if I go up to 8 magnification or down to 1 magnification, I have to basically retake that, you know, I have to kind of redo it. I have to recount it, because what's happening is as you're zooming in and out, the image on the reticle and the image that you're seeing in the background, the two do not stay proportionately the same. And this was the reason why I got like really frustrated today, and I ended up basically going back home. And I ended up going back home and getting this scope here, which is this one over here, which is a first focal plane. You know, I'll show you guys. It's the PLX 1:8 by 24 first focal plane. This is a $1,500 scope. The benefit of the other one's a $500 scope. Okay, actually I saw it on sale this morning. That one is $450. Great scope. But today I was really like the first time that I encountered a frustrating limitation with that scope, because here's the thing, when you're out here in this distance, right, and you're trying to track targets, for the most part, you want to start off in that 1 power, because you got that wide field of view, right? All right, let me try to line you up. So you got to be in that 1 power to get that wide field of view, right? To get you in that general area, and then basically you might go up to 3 power. You're going to spend a lot of your time working in 3 power, right? Because that 3 power is going to give you, because when you're in 1 power, like over here, you really basically you're looking at the entire horseshoe. Let's get over here. You can't really see the details on it. But when you go to 3 power, you're able to see a bit more lines that you can kind of hold on. Let me see if I can line you guys. Okay, so let's talk about the practicality, okay, of trying to lead a target that's moving. Okay? The problem is that you pretty much have to be either in 1 power, so you have that wide field of view. And once you get to the general area, you can kind of get down into that 3 power. Unless you're like way out, like almost at like 800 yards, it's kind of hard to work in that 8 power, because your target's moving, and it's, you know, it's just too easy to lose it. Okay, so for the most part, it's going to be, most of the time you're going to probably be working in that 3 power when you're trying to lead those targets. And the nice thing about the first focal plane, that, hey, you know what, I could go up to 4 power, I can go up to 5 power, whatever measurement I take, right? So if I take my initial measurement, let's say at 3 power, and I'm like, okay, I need to lead this 2 seconds from this point to this point, I can, you know, if I need to switch up to 4 power or 5 power to make it a little easier for me, I can do that, and I don't have to recalculate, you know, the 2 points that I'm trying to, the point I'm trying to lead upon. Okay, so that's the massive advantage of the first focal plane scope, which really blows the second focal plane completely out of water. Because when I was trying to do this with the second focal plane, it's like, okay, you know, even though the measurements in the second focal plane are set for 8 magnification, I'm like, you know what, it doesn't matter. I'm going to go down 3 magnification, I know that those mill lines aren't accurate, but I can still use it to time my target. And so fine. So at 3 power, I figured out, I can figure out the timing. But if I go from 3 power now up to 5 power or down to 2 power, now I have to basically retime it. Okay, so with the first focal plane, whatever I time it at whether it's at 2 power or 7 power or whatever, as I'm shifting back and forth, that lead time stays the same. And so this is like really like the first time where I've been like, okay, yeah, for this particular application, first focal plane really gives you a significant advantage. In all the other things that I have been doing and testing and shooting with the first focal plane versus second focal plane, most of the time I'm like, you know what, the first focal plane really doesn't give me that much of advantage over the first focal plane. Okay, it's just that I knew that, hey, with the second focal plane, in order to do range estimate, right, for range estimating purposes and for bullet drop compensation purposes, I knew that I needed to be in 8 power, which is fine. All right, you're like, yeah, okay, no big deal. And if you're trying to lead a target, let's say inside of inside of 100 yards or 200 yards, yeah, not a big deal. You can come back to 3 power because you're really not timing it. You're just pretty much putting it on it or just leading like right in front of the target just a little bit. That's easy. But once you get out to like 300 yards, 400 yards, 500 yards, where you really have to make an effort to time that target in order to lead it, and you have this issue of like, you're like, okay, you're in whatever 7 magnification. Oh shit, you're losing it. Okay, you gotta dial it back to 3 magnification. You gotta dial it back to 2 magnification. That's where the first focal plane really makes that difference, and it outshines the second focal plane. So that's my lesson for today, guys. And this isn't just a lesson from me to you guys. This is a lesson from me to myself. Having found, I think, a place where it's like, okay, first focal plane, for leading targets, first focal plane, massive advantage. Okay, massive advantage. Okay, so drop some comments below. Let me know what you guys think. Let me try and get behind the camera. Tried doing this earlier and I ended up cutting it out because I just could not line this up right. So let me see if I can line it. So in 1 power I seem to be getting it kind of. Alright, so in 1 power, basically we're using the whole horseshoe to time our targets. Right, because we can't see the chevron in the center. So we're using the entire horseshoe. Alright, let's go to 3 power. So basically here, I'm using the barbells. That's my 3-second hold with that first barbell in the mill line on those cars. Should have said that. I was specific on the cars. Let's go to 8 magnification. It's usually a tough one trying to find the eye box. So I think you're getting a good sense of why that's just too close for leading. You got to go up to 3 power. So that's, actually I'll put the rangefinder on those cars in a second. I'll tell you guys exactly how far that is. Hold on, my shoulders are getting tired holding this scope. Hold on, let me pause this for a second. Okay, got a couple of glimpses there. That was at 3 power. And you can kind of see why working with this at 3 power is kind of like the optimal place to be. And you know, and that's also the reason why the second focal plane is not optimal. I'm sorry, second focal plane scope is not optimal because you want to be at 3 power most of the time. But sometimes you may, like if I'm looking at the boats out there, the speedboats, you know, maybe I can zoom up to 8 power, you know, especially if something is at like 600-700 yards. You know, I can zoom up to that 8 power. But then, like if I'm at 150 yards, I want to definitely bring it back to that 3 power. And I don't want the timing that I take from one as I zoom in and out to change. Okay, so hope this video was useful. I'll talk to you soon. Drop some comments below. Hey everyone, I just got back and I was reviewing the video and I realized that when I was showing you guys the technique of how to lead a target, some of it might have been a little bit off screen, or maybe it wasn't easy enough to understand. So I figured let me just show you guys the technique again, because if you don't understand the technique, the rest of the video is not very useful. So with the first focal plane scope, when you're in 1 power, you see this image. And when you're in max magnification, you see this. When you're somewhere in the middle, you're basically going to see, you know, kind of like a close-up image of that. It'll look something like that. Okay, so when I was trying to lead the cars that you guys saw on the highway, right? The cars are going pretty fast, so I had to zoom out, because if I tried to use this, what happened is, like, by the time, like, if I put the car here, right, by the time I try to count it, it was like almost out of my view almost. So using this, I was able to track it. So with the cars, right, I would put the car like right there, and then basically I would count 3 seconds, and in 3 seconds the car would basically get to this line right here. Okay, so now if I wanted to lead the car, because I know it takes it basically 3 seconds to get from here to there, okay, on the other side, right, presuming that the car is moving that way, right, because I've already timed it from here to there, 3 seconds. Okay, as soon as it hits this side, I pull the trigger, and then basically it comes into my shot there. Okay, so the cars, I had to basically zoom out like this. With the walkers and some of the the jet skiers and the boats that were moving a little bit slower, I was able to use this. So most of my people that were like on a bicycle, basically I would start them off here, right? And then I would count 2 seconds, and by 2 seconds, they were basically here, okay? Right, so they're moving in this direction, right? So as soon as they get here, right, I just count 1, 2, okay? So it doesn't matter, like, let's say I got somebody that's going faster, right? So because you don't know how fast these people are going on bikes. You might have somebody that's fast on the bike. You might have somebody that's slow on the bike. So you might get somebody that's fast on the bike, and you go 1, 2, he gets all the way out there to the end, okay? Right. So, and everybody's going to count at a different rate. You know, some people might say 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, right? You know, I just do 1, 2. You know, so 1, 2. Most of my bicycle guys were here. So what I would do is I would lead them on this side. You know, basically I would just, so basically as they're coming in, as soon as they hit this thing over here, I pull the trigger, and then they would basically, you know, the two would meet over there. Okay, so this is a technique that works with everything, right? Even with the, you know, with people on foot, with some of the people on foot, I think at 100 yards, what I was doing is I would put them here, and as they were walking, basically I would do 1, 2, and then they would end up on the edge over here in those 2 seconds. So those people I would lead on this side, right? So if they move in this direction, as soon as they hit this 1, 2, you know, basically they come here, I pull the trigger, they're gonna end up over there. Okay, so and it doesn't matter if they're going diagonally. It makes no difference. Now those cars that because I was going to tell you guys how far the cars were, just for point of reference. Those cars were at 150 yards. That's kind of where I had guessed they would be. And then I put the rangefinder on it, and yeah, they were at 150 yards. Okay, so just to put things into perspective. Now, so this is basically your first focal plane scope, where you see this image over here when you zoomed out, this image over here when you zoomed all the way in, and kind of something in between. And here's the thing: you can, like, let's say, take your measurements in 3 power, and then if you zoom in like this, it's still good, right? But if you have a second focal plane scope, right? If you've got this over here, this is the other one I showed you earlier that kind of got cut off a little bit. Like with this one, if you time somebody, right? Let's say you got somebody in at let's say at 3 magnification, right? So you're here, right? So let's say you're like, you know, they're moving, right? Let's say they're running, right? So it's 1, 2. Let's say they end up over here. Okay, well now you're on 3 magnification. Well, now if you go up to 8, this is no good no more, right? You got to do this again. So if you do this now, same deal. You got the same guy moving at the same speed, right? So you go 1, 2. At 8 magnification, he might get all the way out here, right? Or if you're in 1 magnification, he might get all the way over here. So you might be 1, 2. So this is the same person moving at the same speed, because in the second focal plane scope, as you're zooming in and out, this image here does not change in size, right? Stay, you know, the background, right? Zooms in, zooms out, but this image stays in at the same size. So whatever magnification you time your moving object, you have to stay at that magnification, or if you move to a different magnification, you have to time it again. Now, let's say you're at, you know, like let's say you're at 500 yards, right? So at 500 yards, I'd be using this line over here. So basically, I would be doing the same thing. I'd be using this mill grid. If I know I'm at, you know, if I range some, because I got the auto ranging feature here, right? So 500 yards, like let's say somebody, his feet are here, his head's here, all right? I can size him at 500 yards, or if his belt is here, his head's here, okay, he's at 500 yards. So basically, I'd be at 500 yards, I'd be using this line right here. All right, so I would do the same thing. If I got somebody moving at 500 yards, I would start him here, right? And I would do 1, 2, right? If he gets up to that line over there, then I know I got to lean him on that side, right? So I put it here, right? And then basically, as soon as he's moving, as soon as he crosses this line, I pull the trigger, and then the two connect over here, okay? But again, whatever, so let's say I do this at 8 magnification, then I go back to 3 magnification. No good. I got to then retime this, okay? Whereas with this, as I zoom in and out, because this is the first focal plane, as I zoom in and out, my measurements are true in, you know, are going to be good in all magnifications. Now, one of the things I told you earlier with this scope, this is the Primary Arms M10S. These dots over here, these are basically built-in leads, okay? So that's basically, this dot here is your walker, that's your jogger, and that's your runner, okay? But the thing is like, at what I mean, is this good at 50 yards? Is it good at 100 yards? Is it good for 200 yards? Is it good for 500 yards? I've got no idea, right? I didn't see anything in the instructions. I would guess this is probably good for somewhere between 200 and 300 yards, but that's just a guess. I would basically have to time it. You know, I wouldn't. You know, I would have to time it, because I don't know if my measure. You know, I mean, I just don't know. I mean, I have no way of knowing. Now, I suppose this is good for somebody that has not seen my video of how to time, how to lead someone. So this would be good. Like if you know, throw a gun with a scope on it to somebody that's doesn't know anything about timing it. Hey, at least they got a starting point, right? At least you got somebody that's only had a couple of sessions of training. You can say, okay, yeah, if you got a runner, you know, that's your walker, that's your jogger, that's your runner. At least they got, you know, something to start off with, you know, and then maybe somebody else can spot for them, or, you know, tell them to, you know, shoot left or shoot right or whatever. But so this isn't bad. This is a good starting point. But for those of you guys watching this video, I think you're a little bit better than that, or you're looking to go beyond that. So that's why you need something like this. And that's also the reason why with this $1,500 scope, if you notice, they didn't put in any like leads for walkers, joggers, runners, because at different distances it's going to be different, right? You got to make your own calculations, right? So now this does have wind holds over here, this Raptor. So let's say I got somebody at
let's say 500 yards, which is this line over here, right? So if I know I'm gonna, if I already range somebody out to 500 yards, and I'm gonna be shooting on this line, what I would do is I would just use the wind holds over here, right? So basically, I would start them here, and I'd be like 1, 2, right? So let's say they get all the way to the second one over there, right? So now I know on this side they're moving in this direction. As soon as they cross this one, right? They come here, bang, and then they end up over here, right? So I would use these lines down here to time it. And each of these lines is different, right? Because these dots are intended for wind holds, right? So these dots over here are a little further apart than these dots over here. But it doesn't make a difference because I'm observing and timing, right? So let's say I've got somebody, whatever, at 400 over here, right? So the same deal, right? I start him here. I go 1, 2. He only gets to 1. Okay, so I know I got to start him here. So 1, 2, boom, and he gets hit there. Okay? So I hope this added some clarity to what I said earlier if it wasn't clear. So drop some comments below, and I'll talk to you all soon.